Hey folks, it's Sam, and I am doing this live update here on the upcoming new moon in Virgo and the beginning of the Navratri, or the 9 nights of the Divine Mother celebration that will accompany that. This is going to be happening. It's starting October 6th. That's the beginning of Navratri on the new moon in Virgo. And as you can see, this is the day here. You can see here on this chart, this is October 6th. And you see this will have this new moon in Virgo. And that's the beginning of the 9 nights of the Divine Mother. It's the beginning of this whole festival. And I'm going to be talking about the connection to that time of year, to this new moon in Virgo, and some possible reasons why this is when we celebrate Navratri. It's very auspicious time of the year for these kinds of celebrations. And in fact, we have 2 months in a row where the new moons begin, or where they have extreme significance, Navratri, and then next month it's Diwali, or the Festival of Light, and they're 2 successive new moons. This new moon is actually following the last full moon that was a couple weeks ago, and that was the beginning of the Pitru Paksha, if you remember. I did a full update on that, which is the fortnight to honor the ancestors. So notice how these things are celebrations that follow each other, right? As I spoke about a couple weeks ago when I talked about that full moon that happened, the most recent full moon, which began the Pitru Paksha, which is where you learn to let go of the attachment to the ancestors, to, let's say, departed family members and whatnot, so that you can release their soul and your difficult attachments to them and things like that. Now is a time where we should be looking for omens, especially like animals that are visiting us and whatnot, because our ancestors can come in those forms. So we're still in that cycle now. And as I record this today on the 29th, you go back, we're on Navami. I believe it's Navami today. You see Krishna Navami. Krishna means Krishna Paksha, which is the waning cycle of the moon. And Navami is the 9th lunar day. So everything in Indian cosmology is timed to these lunar days, or what are also called tithis. Again, full moon is a tithi, right? It's Purnima, which is the 15th tithi. Actually, the 15th tithi is the last day of Shukla Paksha, or the waxing cycle of the moon. Then once it becomes totally full, that moment it begins Krishna Paksha and it begins waning. So that's when the Pitru Paksha started a couple weeks ago, was right as we hit the full moon and the moon started waning. And that's the cycle we're in now. That was about 9 days ago, right? And it's 9 days of the moon waning and getting smaller. And so we will have the new moon, or what's called Amavasya, on the 15th tithi of waning moon. So that's in like 6 days. And so as you have Navami, which means 9 days, and then Dashami, then Ekadashi, then Dwadashi, then Tridashi, then Chaturdashi, then Amavasya, or the 15th tithi. So we're in that cycle right now. And as you see, the moon is up here, and the full moon happened. If you watch this, we'll go back 9 days, and it happened right here. Well, Purnima, and then it happened as the moon went and exactly opposed the sun in early Pisces. That's when we had it. So again, this was on the 21st. So now we're about 9 days later, 20th, 21st. We're on the 9th day, Navami, right over here. You see it changing, Ashtami, Navami. Then it goes Dashami, Ekadashi, Dwadashi, Triadashi, Chaturdashi, then Amavasya, which is here, which is the new moon. So these cycles are the sun and the moon related, okay? So this is what really coordinates the important festivals in Indian life and the timing of life and our unfolding consciousness. Now, these aren't things that are earthbound. Okay, you want to make a distinction because, again, we also just had like the solstice and equinox and all this stuff. Well, we just had the equinox rather, but these are things that just show our, the rhythms of life on Earth, for like growing food and our relation to the earth, and again, living our life in harmony with nature and all of that, because we're living on Earth. But we need to make a distinction. Those things are measured with the calendar, with the cycles of life. In India, that was called the Sayana chakra, which, again, it's not the zodiac. The zodiac is where we measure planets moving through the sky. This thing I was just showing you about the sun-moon connections and all, that's all with the zodiac, because we don't know what calendar date that's going to happen, right? So all of those other things, like the first day of spring or summer or winter, those are timed to the calendar dates. We know exactly when those days are going to happen. Exactly. We know it's going to be, September 21st or 22nd, we're going to have the equinox. If you're in the northern hemisphere, it's the autumnal equinox. If you're in the southern hemisphere, it's the vernal equinox. But we know it's going to be that calendar date because it's only measuring the Earth going around the sun. That's all it is. That's the measurement. Not to make it insignificant, because it's important. We're living on the Earth and our life comes from the sun. So yes, it's very important, but it's not astrology, okay? It's not Jupiter going around and Venus and sun, moon, and Mercury retrograde. None of that has to do with that calculation. Again, you can just even understand very simply why that measurement is not the zodiac, okay? Now, you can use that to measure the sky, but then it's an extrapolation. It's a conflation. You're extrapolating one thing into the other. So in Indian astrology, they never did that. They kept, the sky is always just the sky. And planets moving through the sky are measured just with the zodiac, the sidereal-based zodiac, of course. And things like these new moons and these cycles can only be measured. They're always measured with nakshatras first, and then the signs are laid on top the nakshatras. That's the way it was in all the Vedic astrology texts. So again, these tithis, these lunar phases, can only be measured with the zodiac, because we don't know what calendar date they're going to show up on. We don't even know if the new moon is going to come before the full moon, as far as in the zodiac signs and whatnot. So it's very different. So again, in the midst of these things, that's the context of what are we talking about here. So this particular new moon that happens in Virgo is Navratri. Now, as you see there scrolling on the bottom, I just want to show you that as you see, there's a thing scrolling on the bottom that says end of the year astrology. You may have seen, and actually many of you have gotten this already, that I've been that I've put together a free web class that you can go to that is oops, let me put it up here. That is called End of the Year Astrology. And again, you can find the most important shifts that are coming through the rest of this year. There's still a lot to have happen in 2021. As you see, Jupiter retro in Capricorn re-enters Aquarius, Mercury retrograde cycle that we're in right now, that's going until October 18th. But actually, that Mercury cycle goes until around into November, because it's really tracking Mercury in between Virgo and Libra, right? So then we have a solar eclipse in December. We also have Mars is going to be combust until the end of November. So there's a lot that's going on, and you want to check that out. Whoops, let me just put this here. And I just put this in the chat for those of you who are watching live. Go click that and just register. It's very easy. You just click register now, and you select a time to watch it, either an instant replay, or you can select a day over the next few days, and then you just register, and it's very easy. But it's very important to know what's coming for the rest of this year. Higher purpose and inspiration. This is that Jupiter cycle that's happening. Again, it's going back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius. Communication, again, Mercury retrograde. This is a very auspicious Mercury cycle that I talk about because it started in Virgo, went into Libra. Now it's back in Virgo. So it's really auspicious to have Mercury going back and forth between these two signs. And I talk about the complexities between having the good communication right now and Mercury retrograde back and forth here between Virgo and Libra. But also, in fact, we just started, Venus is about to go into Scorpio, where it's going to be for most of October, right? So in my recent October forecast, I also talked about that. And there's going to be Mars combustion. So in the midst of the communication benefits, because Mercury is back and forth between Virgo and Libra, we also have Mars combustion at the same place. So we kind of have two things going on. We have a beneficial Mercury, but a pretty stressful Mars combust right at the same point. So again, I talk about this in this web class. It's more than an hour, very comprehensive. Also talk about the eclipse that's upcoming, because Mars is then going to also go into Scorpio right when we have the eclipse. So you'll want to know what the rest of this year looks like. It's very, a lot of powerful shifts still to come. And so I really recommend you go and check that out as well, because, because we need to know what's coming. Let me just put this up here again. Okay, and so here's where we are back to this now. One day this software is going to let me have two screens selected at the same time, so I don't have to stop and bounce back and forth here and waste time like that. So anyway, but here we have it now. Let me take a quick drink and then we'll get into this more. All right, so this upcoming new moon, you can see, is going to be in Virgo, and the new moons are always the beginning of a new cycle. When they come together, the sun and moon come together, and it sets off that principle, right? What's happening now is that the full moons are coming before the new moons. So it's actually where we're kind of letting go of something first, and then we get the initiation of the cycle. So right now, because the full moon happened in Pisces, this Pitru Paksha time, it's also a time to be letting go of a lot of our emotional, kind of fantasies and kind of disconnect that we can have. This is a big part of what's going on right now, letting go of the illusion, letting go of the delusions that we can have. So right now we're in that phase of also letting go of a lot of delusions. And so that by the time we get to this new moon in Virgo, we can really align with being focused, being, buttoned down, being practical, being, grateful for the life on Earth, that embodied life on Earth. Because one of the difficult qualities of Pisces can be that sort of, why do anything? Just let it all kind of happen. It's all working out anyway. I don't have a lot of power to change anything. So I'm just going to kind of let everything kind of happen. And it's this sort of complacency that can happen in Pisces if we're not careful. So right now, because the phases started on that, we're being challenged to kind of let go of that complacency right now, to see that it's there, but also realize how being too passive in the midst of all of that and just sort of checking out and thinking, well, it'll all kind of take care of itself, isn't always the greatest thing anyway. Now, we can let go of a certain amount of illusion, though, let go of the illusion, in fact, that illusion. And so the more we can let go of that, of the extremes, because these signs always represent extremes. There's the extreme of just making sure, it'll all take care of itself, which is the Pisces illusion. And the Virgo illusion is that I have control over everything. And I have to worry about every little detail because it's up to me to fix and manage everything. That's the Virgo illusion. So they actually are complementary of each other at some point in the middle. Like everything, it's the middle path. So this is one of the things that all the lunation cycles teach us. I just taught a big class on this a while ago about the projection and illusion and the polarizing qualities that are represented in the astrology chart everywhere. New moons and full moons are natural polarities where we're getting pulled in two different directions and we need to find the middle point. The lunar nodes, the nodal axis, is also always a polarizing part of the astrology. And so we're being challenged to find moderation, right? So right now, as we're here in the phase, as you just saw, we're here in Navami up here, Punarvasu. So we're here we're getting close to the, to the new moon down here. And so trying to reconcile the opposition of Pisces Virgo. So what we're really being challenged to do the next few days is let go of a lot of the somewhat childish notions that we may have that, well, if I just kind of if I just kind of ignore it all, somehow it'll all take care of itself. That's not necessarily so healthy. So bringing a healthy kind of relationship to transcendence and metaphysics, again, and the healthy option is always found in our spiritual practices and whatnot. So, for example, rather than just kind of tuning out, because one of the simplest ways that we see a dysfunctional Pisces energy is things like entertainment and escapism. We live in a very escapist culture now. Have you been noticing your escapist tendencies? It's not just drugs and alcohol. Many of us now escape into things like media, entertainment. It used to be, even like when I was growing up, you had three TV channels to watch, and most of the stuff on them were stupid. If you had any brain, half the time you weren't watching it because it wasn't worth watching. And so instead of watching and entertaining yourself and wasting all your time through mindless entertainment and distraction, people actually got stuff done. It's a real challenge now because we're like, a mouse click away from pretty much watching, consuming, and escaping into anything we want. Every TV show we've liked is there to watch anytime, any subject that we might be interested in. We can just kind of escape into it. That's a big Pisces area of life, especially when we think, well, I'm learning something. I'm escaping into documentaries or educational things, or like we see now, research, conspiracy research. I'm researching. I'm not wasting time. I'm doing research. Again, sorry, I don't mean to mock anyone, but a lot of it's not research. A lot of it is distracting, time-wasting pursuits that are not really teaching us anything. It's certainly not tuning in. It's certainly not tuning in like to meditation and tuning into the inner world, which is the highest vibration of Pisces. The highest vibration of Pisces is not the outer escapism where we escape from the self into the world of distraction, but the highest quality of Pisces is where we escape from the world of distraction to the true self. So rather than escaping from the self into the world of distraction, we escape from the distraction into the self. But that's an internal process and an inner dissolving, an inner merging. So this new moon in Virgo is like the opposite of that, where we need to organize and structure our world in a way that facilitates something like spiritual practice and meditation. The perfect harmonic convergence between Pisces and Virgo is someone who uses that Virgo energy to manage and organize and set up and purify a space that's perfectly conducive for meditation, spiritual practice. That's the highest quality of the Virgo Pisces axis. where the details and organization of Virgo is aligned and is utilized for the purposes of being able to now tune in to that highest self rather than escape into distraction and details. Again, you can see how this is the negative quality of Virgo and Pisces, really, because we're escaping Pisces into like all these details. And, again, maybe it's like conspiratorial research or some other kind of even just distraction, like, oh, this is fun or this is that, which is the Virgo world. So we're about to start this new moon in Virgo that's going to present the opportunity for us to authentically organize our life and organize our inner life and our inner world. The Vedic sciences are just the perfect platform and format and system through which to evolve consciousness. This is why, many people who have a prominent Mercury are very drawn to the Indian sciences, because it's all these details, all of these spiritual details. There's the science of spirituality. Spiritual growth is not random. It doesn't happen randomly. It doesn't happen because somehow you're just floating around. It's actually a very methodical practice. It's a combination of surrender and methodology. Spiritual practice is not just a bunch of it's not belief, it's not religion. You need, if you sit a certain way and you breathe a certain way and you focus on the most minute detail in the most precise way, it will happen. Something will happen. Just like medicine, just like anything that works correctly. Science is not random. Now, again, it captures the essence. However, we need to be able to, spirit is wild and divergent and moving. However, existence, spirit taking form as you, is very ordered. There's nothing chaotic about it. If the universe were chaotic, anything could happen at any time. There's this whole Western chaos theory, this whole idea we've been raised and indoctrinated in the West, especially, that the universe is chaotic and it's chaos. It's preposterous. Your body is not chaotic. Life is not chaotic. Everything is, in fact, it's so structured that we get bored. I mean, if things were chaotic, anything could happen. But in fact, hardly nothing happens that's unusual. When something unusual happens, we're shocked by it. But it shows how your body, your mind, and consciousness are operating through in a very remarkable, intelligent design that can not only be understood, but it can be, if you can use modern language, like hacked into. I don't like to use the word hacked into because it sounds like some kind of, new age turn of the phrase. But I mean, literally what happens when you're authentic meditation is sort of like hacking into the matrix, you might say. You can be asleep to all this stuff that's happening. It doesn't mean it isn't real. Astrology itself is a way to hack into the matrix, so to speak. People don't have to be awake to this stuff. They can just live your life and your life will be fine. But if you want to actually know how everything is working and what's really going on, you can know it. And not just know it intellectually, but engineer it. What do you think yogis do? What do you think yoga is? It's a combination of the Virgo Pisces axis. It's the most metaphysical, cosmic, unembodied, transcendent thing imaginable, brought down into the most precise and inflexible detail. At some point, again, meditation, at some point, authentic spiritual growth and wisdom and experience becomes extremely narrow. Again, when we're just starting to do it, almost anything besides our normal unfocused mind looks like progress. Like if we're just kind of never focusing on anything, then as soon as we start trying to meditate even a little bit, we can see progress because we're so undisciplined. But if you keep doing it at some point and you really learn and you really start to connect with that silence inside and that stillness, and you're at a certain point, the further and further you go, the more and more relentless you need to be. You'll hit a certain point, and then you can get to that level of, relaxation or samadhi or whatever that's what the terms are. But then to go any deeper, you have to get like 10 times more focused. And then to get to the next level beyond that, you have to get 10 times more focused. It gets more and more crucial, more and more detailed, but not in a pressure-filled way, but in a surrendering way. And so again, it's like the more Pisces you get, the more transcendent you get, the more Virgo you have to be in order to reach it. The more expansive and transcendent the state, the more relentlessly focused and detailed you need to be in order to reach that state. So the point of the matter is, or of this, is that Virgo is that precision into which you are living. All of your karma didn't unfold perfectly by some kind of random, somehow this all happened. No. We know how it happens at this point. The rishis know, the Vedic sciences explain it. They can explain it from the yogic perspective, from the Ayurvedic perspective, from the astrological perspective. And those details really come down, particularly in the axis of Gemini, Sagittarius, that Mercury, Jupiter axis, and Virgo, Pisces. Gemini, Sagittarius more in the realm of like knowledge and inspiration, because they're more about, that sort of external fire and air, like figuring things out and understanding and comprehending. But the Virgo Pisces axis is very much about putting those things into practice internally, because they're feminine signs and they're about feeling that truth in the heart and that deep intuition. And again, it's more complicated because the emotions, again, Pisces is quite emotional, and we can easily mistake our emotions for devotion and spirituality and all of that. And this is often what happens. Often what happens is everything is an emotional experience. And until you have authentic spiritual experience, which is different than emotional experience, okay? Spirituality is not just emotions. It's not just how you feel. In fact, authentic spirituality is not about how you feel at all at some point, right? Because you're feeling more peaceful at first, that's a good indicator that you're getting, quote, more spiritual, you might say, because you're not just living in accordance with your chaotic and random emotions. But at some point, once it becomes real spirituality and real spiritual practice, it's not based on how comfortable you feel or how happy you are right now and all of that. It becomes very different. And again, this is where a lot of these illusions go. That's why I say all the time that spirituality is not, it's not a bunch of ideas. It's not a bunch of emotions. It's practices. You do practices. If you're not doing spiritual practice, then it's not spirituality. It could be a lot of things, but spirituality is practices that connect you to your spirit. Now, emotions are kind of in between. So I'm talking about this because we're in this Pisces Virgo axis. Again, this is a lot of the illusion, because in many ways, the most immediate access to something that feels transcendent is our emotions, especially Pisces emotions. oh, I'm so free, I feel, and it's just an emotional experience. To it's not to negate it, but it can be just as far from spirituality as anything. You can get that getting drunk, getting high, having sex again, and there's nothing wrong with doing those things, but they're not necessarily spiritual. They can just keep creating tons of attachment, more ego, more longing, more craving, and just be taking you very far away from spiritual experience. So again, you can see that as the Pisces side, and the Virgo side is very narrow. It's very much on the other side, which is like, I need to make sure that everything I do is correct, and we can worry about everything. Again, we can be on the opposite side of it from the Virgo side. So this is a big part of the axis we're in right now. So on this new moon, I'm going to talk about Hasta. I'm going to talk about Navratri, and then a couple other things here. One second. So this new moon is also Navratri, which is the 9 nights of the Divine Mother. There are many ways that this is celebrated in India. There are certain celebrations where you have 9 different goddesses, which is somewhat a modification of a sort of tantric approach, where you have 9 different deities. What I've usually, how I've usually celebrated, which is I think a little more traditional in the sense of, especially you see this a lot in Western yoga communities, probably in Indian yoga communities as well. I do know that it's practiced in the Shivananda organization. My guru Amma and her organization pretty much also celebrates the first 3 nights as a celebration of Durga energy. Durga is the goddess who destroys darkness and fear. And then the second 3 nights as the celebration of Lakshmi, which is about love and abundance and prosperity and feeling loved, that you belong here on earth. And then the final 3 nights is to Saraswati, which is about being creative, creativity, and those things. And then the 10th night is called Vijayadashmi, which is where we then celebrate the victory of the Divine Mother over the buffalo demon, right? So this is in many ways a little more of an approachable way to study, because it also brings out what are called the 3 gunas. And these are the evolution of consciousness and the matrix, again, through which this happens. So the first 3 nights of Durga is that destruction of darkness and pain and suffering. You see, you have to destroy that pain and suffering in order for you to be able to feel any love and abundance and prosperity, which is the next 3 nights. And until you feel love and prosperity and abundance, you're not going to feel creative, and not just creative to create music or something, but to create yourself, the sattvic guna. So the 3 gunas of tamas, rajas, and sattva are also played out in the 3 nights of the Divine Mother when they're played out. I should say the 9 nights of the Divine Mother when they're played out through the 3 gunas this way. So again, it's very important to understand. You can understand this in your own life. We're all mainly stuck on one of the gunas more than the other, but we're always playing with these gunas. Think of anything in your life. This is how all creativity and higher consciousness unfolds. Let's say, for example, look at someone's life who feels like they're hated, like people hate them. Let's say that you think someone hates you, right? Which is the tamasic guna. How much love and trust and joy are you going to feel around that person if you think they hate you? Well, not very much. First, you have to know that they don't hate you or that they're not going to hurt you. This is why we can find someone and we care about them and we love them. But then if they hurt us and we feel afraid of them, we're not going to be able to give love or be open to trust them because they've hurt us, or again, not to blame them, but because we associate being around them with hurt and pain. So then we're closed off. So the part of us that may want to love them, which is the Lakshmi part, which is the Rajas Lakshmi energy, won't be able to love them if we're afraid they're going to hurt us. We're afraid they're going to kill us, right? So this is how the gunas, one guna will stop the other one. And again, how creative can we be, let's say, around a person where there's no love, where we're afraid to love them and we're afraid they're going to kill us, right? So tamas first has to come first. And so the goddess Durga on the first night, the first 3 of the 9 nights, is the one who we pray and we surrender to these goddess energies. And again, this is why I believe the astrology behind this axis is so important, because it's these feminine signs. It's this Virgo Pisces axis, this axis of transcendence, it's a feminine axis, not a masculine. It's a feminine axis, Pisces and Virgo, like all the stuff I just stated. We need to surrender. We need to allow the goddess to work on us internally. And we need to trust that goddess Durga will destroy and take away the pain and give us the courage to trust others, so that we can not be afraid of getting hurt. Now, again, I just used an example of an individual, by the way, there's nothing wrong with not trusting certain individuals, so not being involved with them anymore because they keep hurting us or it's toxic or something. So that was just an example, but I'm talking mainly about life here. Think about you embracing life. How much joy and abundance are you going to get out of life, which is the Lakshmi, if you're always afraid that you're going to get hurt, or you're always afraid that everybody's out to get you? And by the way, I'll just say this as a quick aside. This is what hurts me so much about all the conspiratorial thinking now, all the conspiracy theories and all that stuff, is that I just see how worked up and just jacked up and stressed out people make themselves over these things, right? Things that they really don't know. They just believe, and they choose to believe that. And they're just so worked up. Again, it's not about trying to prove them wrong or call them a conspiracy theorist or whatever. It's just sad to watch. I'm like, why are you choosing to believe this? Again, when you're choosing to believe this dark thing, all this dark stuff, how much love and abundance and joy and peace are you going to feel? Not much, because you're already at this point where you're vibrating in this kind of alarmed situation. It's all this tamasic fear and anger. I'm fearful of what they're doing and I'm angry at them. Ooh, right? That's going to stop love and joy and peace, which is Lakshmi, and certainly creativity. Certainly not a lot of creativity when that's what you think the world is, right? So this is why the first goddess is Durga. Durga is the one with all the weapons, ready to. The weapons aren't for us; they're for the demons that are infiltrating our mind, our ignorance, basically. The Mahishasura, which is the great buffalo demon. Mahishasura. There's a great song called Mahishasura Stotram. The Mahishasura Mardini Stotram. Mardini, the one who kills the buffalo demon. So the first 3 nights of the Navratri, of the 9 nights celebration, is Durga. So those 3 nights call in the protective quality of Durga. The protective quality that says you're safe. You're safe. Let's say, for example, that all the conspiracies are true. You're still safe, okay? You're still safe. You're safe. Relax. Relaxez-vous. S'il vous plaît. Relax. How much can you relax if you're charged up on all this stuff? Not much. So One of the most important things, the biggest yogic principle there is relax. It is. It's a great, great yogic principle. And by the way, it's hard for Virgo to do it. Virgo is often one of the most stressed out signs because Virgo, the difficulty with Virgo is this feeling that it's up to me to do everything, worried that I have to figure it all out. I have to do all of it. Because the Pisces, which is I can't do any of it, is the most unintegrated part. So the opposite of Pisces, which says I'm not in control of anything, is Virgo, which is saying I'm in control of everything. It's up to me. So relax. Relax, everybody. The world is what it's always been. Really is. Now, there's some things that are getting pushed to the brink, particularly things like climate change and other kinds of things but anyway, first 3 nights, Durga, to destroy the fear and anger that comes from ignorance of the things you don't know, but you believe that make you afraid and angry. And that includes your history. I use the things we see in the world now, but it's about your life, the things that you believe about what happened to you, let's say about your parents or how you've been treated and how angry it makes you and how afraid you are to trust others and you're angry about it. You're going to do something. And again, all of that, because nothing has ever been wrong. There are no mistakes in anything. It's all been fine. We have a different idea, and that's called the ego. So you got to understand all of these teachings, everything always comes back to that. So anyway, but first 3 nights, Durga, to destroy that ignorance. And once that happens, then we feel and we know that the universe is my home. I belong here. I'm loved. I'm loved. I belong here. I can trust. I can relax. And joy and love is flowing through me because I don't have to protect myself against all the bad stuff. I'm flowing. I'm relaxed. I'm at home, not just on the earth, but in my heart, because that's where all this is happening. Again, we project it all outward as if it's the world and the government and the this and the parents and the this and oh no, it's that. Really, that is what it was. That's the reason. Yeah, okay. But the battlefield, Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita is on the battlefield, and the external battlefield is just a symbol. As soon as he asks Krishna about what's going on, Krishna doesn't even talk about the battlefield anymore. He talks about the inner battlefield. This ain't the first time you've been in the body. It's not the first time you've been on a battlefield. So the peace and the unease or the dis-ease that you feel is in your heart. And the projection and the fear and the hanging on to the injustices and all. And look, don't get me wrong. I'm not preaching. I'm as tangled up in it all as everybody else. I am no better. Please don't think I'm acting like I am, because I'm not. I don't want to create that impression. I'm no better at any of this. We project it outward because of our inner state. So again, once we feel that divine protection that comes from those qualities of the Durga energy, then we can prosper and love in our heart and embrace and trust. And basically trust, the main thing that we can trust is we can trust that we can handle whatever comes our way. You see, because it doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect, but it means that I'm not afraid to be vulnerable, because if I open myself up to love and to take a chance and to put myself out there and to be open-hearted, and somebody screws me over or whatever the thing is that we're afraid is going to happen, I can handle it. Not only can I handle it, it's not going to crash my whole world. My whole identity isn't going to come screeching to a halt. I'm not going to turn into a monster. I'm not going to be utterly destroyed because I'm anchored in my heart. And that heart is a heart of truth and wisdom. You see, because the reason we lose ourselves in that external false narrative. We believe all of that is the source of it. And if we believe all that's the source of it, then we don't know ourselves, and we don't have any buffer between what we imagine might happen and what we might imagine our worst response or instinct to it would be. So we're afraid to even get involved because what happens if I take a chance on something and it doesn't work? Oh, will I be able to handle it? Will it just that's going to hurt so bad. I don't even want to try. And this is what typically happens in people's lives. People give up. They stop even trying to live through the heart, to live a heart-centered life where they're showing up to want to be the best they can be for others and to be of service and to all of that. These lives of quiet desperation where we're just trying to survive it. So again, Durga destroys that in the first 3 days. Then the next 3 days of Lakshmi is when that love grows in our heart, that love, that joy, that abundance, that prosperity. So then we can call that in at that time. And the prosperity, money's part of it, but try to not turn it into money because then it's the least important part. The real value is the thing I just said, is that connection to the heart, that heart-centered life that is not afraid to be open and vulnerable. And so from that place of being open and loving and vulnerable, then there's the highest creativity possible. Now, again, that could be literally creative, like with music or some other kind of thing, writing or whatever, but it's also literally creating the self in the highest sense. Saraswati and the sattvic goddess. Again, there's no sattva or purity or pure wisdom or knowledge flowing if there's no sense of peace and contentment, which is the Lakshmi principle. And again, there's no peace and contentment if there's that anger, stress, and fear. You're cut off. So each guna cuts you off from the next one if you're not aligned. So after that joy and love fills your heart, then you can be creative. Then you can relax first. Again, relax. That's the big Lakshmi thing, more than anything, is to be able to relax in your heart. Not get so jacked up and serious and upset about everything. Not so agitated. And then once you're relaxed and calm and still, you can feel your true nature much more easily. And then the highest wisdom comes. And that wisdom is that wisdom of the self, that knowledge of the self. And it could take the form of some form of creativity as well. But it's also spiritual wisdom and spiritual power. So again, this Navratri starts on, it's probably going to start on the 7th, or no, that's going to be, probably on the 7th in the US. Look, this is at 10:00. Oops, let me move this forward a couple hours. This is for San Diego, hours 19. So this is not going to be sunrise yet. Yeah, so 4:30. So again, you can see that when you have this coming together, it's still before sunrise. So usually it's a sunrise tithi. So it's probably going to start on the 7th in the West. You have to look at it because it's regional. It'll most certainly be in India on the 6th. So it'll probably start on the 7th here in the West. 1 second. All right. So very important. Now, one of the main reasons that I think it's also this time is because Virgo is literally called Kanya. And Kanya is a name it's a name for little girl or young girl, or actually like premenstrual young girl. right? And it's said that the goddess, if you want to see the goddess most easily, you could see the goddess most easily in a young girl. In a young girl like 10, 11 or something, before they start menstruating. And again, it's not to be not to be judgmental, but then once they become sexual, so to speak, it changes because then more desires come. But a young girl, the Kanya, again, the word Virgo is obviously a derivation of virgin. So it's a young girl is the name in Sanskrit, Kanya. So in India, they have a whole festival to Kanya Kumari. Kanya, young girl, Kumari is child. So this whole quality of innocence and purity and the multifacetedness of creation is seen in a young girls more than any other human. So you could see the goddess alive in a young girl more than any other place. So I definitely think this is why it's the new moon in Kanya Rashi. That's the reason why we celebrate the one second. Why we celebrate the Navratri in at this time. And I would look for this because I always Katyayanaya Vidmahe Kanyakumari Dhimahi Tano Durgi Prachodayat. That's the Durga Gayatri. Katyayanaya Vidmahe Kanyakumari Dhimahi Tano Durga Prachodayat. Katyayanaya Vidmahe Kanyakumari Dhimahi Tano Durga Prachodayat. Kanyakumari means young virginal girl. You see the goddess most present in the young innocent girl. They're also very fierce. You see the fierceness as well. And as someone who says the Lalita Sahasranama, Lalita is also a form of the goddess who's playful, the playful goddess. Lalita, you can see all of the different forms of the goddess and understand that this entire universe, this cosmos, is just like the goddess playing. It's a play. It's a lila. Again, those who know Lord Krishna and the leelas of Krishna, the games of Krishna, this is a very familiar matrix through which to understand existence. And I think it's one of the most beautiful ones. It's really one that's near and dear to my heart and one that I participate in because, my connection to my guru, Amma, very playful goddess, but also very fierce. Again, you see Amma, she embodies all of this, of course, because she's literally an incarnation of the goddess. And you see she's as fierce as they get, but as playful as they get. Incredibly playful, always smiling, always light as a feather and solid as a mountain. It's like everything you could imagine. That's what's going on. That's what existence is. It's a play of all of these things. And so, in keeping with everything that I've ever learned about astrology, and every time I look at why festivals happen at a certain time, it nails it perfectly. This was perfect time for the Navratri because it's literally the new moon in Kanya. And again, it's the young goddess, the young girl, which is literally where you see the goddess the most easily. They even worship her as Kanya Kumari. The name of Durga, Kanya Kumari Dhimahi, is Kanya, Virgo. It's the name of it. So this is a great time for us all as we live in these triggered, hyper sensitive and charged and polarized times to just exhale and relax and embrace the goddess and realize you're not in control of this. You never have been. All the political whatever, all the whatever, everybody is so like, we just relax, be open through the heart. Nothing has changed. The world is still what the world is. Again, it's sad that if we just woke up to how messed up it is, well, it doesn't mean it wasn't always like that. And it doesn't mean there's no reason to still be enveloped in love and joy and the providence and protection of the Divine Mother. And so, again, starting, I think in the West, it's October 7th. We have those 9 nights of the Divine Mother. The first 3 are to call in that protection, that divine protection, and that divine power. The second 3 is after you feel and you know that you're protected and you're strong, then you can feel love and live through the heart, through the Lakshmi principle. Once you know you're loved, then you can, then everything is possible. Then you're a conduit for the pure wisdom itself, the purity of that goddess Saraswati, who, by the way, Saraswati wasn't a woman, she was a young girl even. She was Brahma's daughter. Like, for example, Durga, Shiva's wife, the first one. Lakshmi is Vishnu's wife. Saraswati is Brahma's daughter. Again, we go back to that purity, the sattvic. It wasn't Brahma's wife, it was his daughter. Brahma was a very old man. It was his daughter. So again, that purity of the female heart, because the female is much more of an archetype of love and purity of the heart. So that sattvic love, that sattvic pure love, is also once again seen in the heart of a young girl. And we all have it in it. Even I do. Even I have the heart of a young girl. Even mean old Sam. I love the young girl. I love my little inner Kanya Kumari. I'll let her out to play once in a while. So I was going to go into a little bit with Mercury retrograde, but I'm not. You can see that it's starting here with that. Mars is also here. These are things that make some of this a little intense here and there or whatnot, but it just brings discipline with the Mars there. Is that it actually shows that it's really a real potent time to be disciplined. It's a great time on this Navratri to be very disciplined, with which is the Mars principle. Be very disciplined, right? And courageous. A lot of courage now to face these things. Courage to face these things. And Mercury retrograde is a time, again, it's exalted here to reflect and to, again, question your strong opinions and whatnot. Question it and really reflect on it and adjust. And again, many times Mercury is going to be exalted on this new moon because Mercury is going to be close to the sun and it's the sun moon in Virgo. So again, this is a very auspicious time of the year. It's a time for a great reset in your life after the summer or whatever, time to get back, into, more of an internal life. Next month is Diwali, which is the festival of light, comes after this new moon. The one in 30 days is a festival of light. We'll talk about that one and the astrological implications then. But this one is very sacred, very beautiful. I hope you appreciated hearing this question. Oh, and it's also in Hasta Nakshatra. Sorry. Hasta is literally, it means the hand, and it's a very sort of practical application of the teachings and of implementing these things so they can change your life for the better. And maybe I'll do another update here between now and then and just talk about Hasta and this in that context as well. So anyway, you take care and